Good morning, everyone. If you're listening to this, I assume there's been some sort of Zoom problem, in which case, thank you very much for your patience. My name is Chris Hand, and I'm going to talk to you today about my experiences of the relationships between access, participation, change, and social justice. Now, I wasn't entirely sure if you had been given access to the CVs or the candidate profiles, so I thought it might be helpful to start off if I gave you a little bit of background about myself. And I did my undergraduate, MSc and PhD degrees at the University of Glasgow in the Department of Psychology before going on to do postgraduate certificates of academic practice, working towards my senior fellowship of what was then the Higher Education Academy. And I've had a passion for sort of practitioner development and pedagogy for a long time. And a lot of that was born from my early experiences as a practitioner, actually working on the MSc Psychological Studies in the School of Education at the University of Glasgow a long time ago, mostly delivering labs and developing research methods and statistics materials. Before I went on to my permanent positions at the University of Bedfordshire and Glasgow Caledonian University, and both of these institutions have a real focus on social justice, widening access, widening participation right at their very core. So I've been very lucky to be kind of living these things for a long time. So the brief that I was given was to explore my professional practice, my scholarship, my teaching in psychology, and how that will contribute to the School of Education's commitment to social justice and widening participation. And as I said, social justice is something that I've been considerate of and aware of for many years in my practice and in my day-to-day professional life. And I've been very lucky to work with a number of different cohorts and different colleagues and learn from them about the multiple challenges and the multiple barriers that different individuals and groups face. And the concept of widening participation here that I've been tasked with, I want to delineate that into two kind of interrelated concepts. One is around widening access and the other is around widening participation. So as I mentioned before, social justice is something that is part of my professional life and has been for a long time. And I have developed a number of programs and activities geared towards exploring social justice and hopefully producing graduates who have as much of a passion for social justice as I do. At the heart of this is valuing individuality, valuing the different challenges that groups and communities face, and understanding the relationship between social justice and individuals, groups and communities, both as drivers of improved social justice, but also as potential barriers to social justice as well. So I mentioned earlier that I wanted to think about access and widening access because I do genuinely believe from my experience that if we do not widen access, then the other activities that we perhaps put in place are somewhat undermined. And over a number of years, I've been involved in things like community outreach and facilitating school visits to normalise university for people from who may be the first in their family to go to university. They may have come from non-traditional academic backgrounds. And I've recently been involved in working with our marketing team to make sure that the applicant events that we have and the admissions events that we have are accessible to people from diverse sets of circumstances. Because if we don't give people the opportunity to access the programs, then the program activities themselves are somewhat undermined. And that might involve something like an initiative I've been involved in recently, which is looking at contextualising admissions criteria for people who have been care experienced. For a number of years, I have led the development of induction and transition activities. We know from excellent research that not all students experience transitions and induction equally. And I'm very keen that from the word go, that these students feel welcome, that they feel able to participate, that they can see representation, and that there is a space for their voice to be heard. I have tried to actively involve our students in discussions around timetabling, and that's particularly pertinent at the moment when we think about the uncertainties around return to campus and setting expectations, understanding the barriers and the challenges that different students face at the moment and are likely to face moving forward, and also appreciating that the current situation around remote working has actually removed a lot of barriers for a number of students. So we have to understand how we can return to campus in a meaningful and fair way while perhaps retaining some of the things that are working well, that are removing barriers to students. In terms of my commitment to developing research activities, my commitment to teaching, learning and assessment, I have been involved in developing a number of initiatives around things like accessible feedback, looking at the type of assessments that we offer, and looking at how I can use the link between teaching and research to support students who have maybe different intentions for postgraduate life, different pathways that they've identified in order to make them successful. The research that I'm most involved in at the moment looks at dark interactions. So it's perhaps looking at things like cyber abuse, it's perhaps looking at concepts like victim blaming, it's looking at things like online sexual harassment. We know, unfortunately, that these things do affect students. We do know that these things occur within higher education contexts. So again, I'm using this research to try and inform some of the sort of structural and sort of policy decisions that are made around the programs that I've been leading, and getting students involved in this research has been really successful. Another strand of research that I'm working on at the moment is around communication. So for instance, how do different users perceive emoji and digital faces? Can we use emoji and digital faces to maybe overcome some of the sort of traditional language barriers that certain groups of participants might face, but while at the same time being cognizant of the fact that using digital faces might be challenging for certain groups with neurodiversities. I've also got a funded research project at the moment which is looking at the use of digital learning technology to try and remove barriers to students with social anxieties and specific learning disabilities around presentation assessments and employability. Something that's key to the modules and programs that I've developed over a number of years is trying to align staff and students when it comes to research and teaching and learning and assessment, for instance, so that student projects are really closely aligned to staff expertise, and that way we can hopefully all help one another to achieve our goals and our desired outcomes. And I think one thing that I've learned through many years of leading programs and modules is to really respect the diversity of people's postgraduate destinations. You know, understanding that people do have very different goals, and over a number of years I've been working a lot with top postgraduate students from diverse pathways, and trying to support them maybe on their way towards practitioner status, or perhaps to completely different pathways from the ones that they actually started on. I think the key thing is to afford students opportunities. And I think giving people opportunity gives people that chance to really make a difference to themselves. So the opportunities for personal growth, to feed that back into the groups and the communities that they are a part of. And I do believe in you know, that through applied psychology and through effective teaching and learning, we can affect change. You know, I don't like the concept of just change for change's sake. I think it has to be driven by listening to our students and listening to individuals, groups and communities. And I do think that, you know, taking an evidence base, looking at barriers, and seeing what we could do better is absolutely crucial, whether that be in terms of access, in terms of representation and voice and participation, but also in terms of generating tangible outcomes that are going to drive social justice. I wanted to finish just by summarising the key points here, that I have a lot of experience of being aware of social justice, having that at the core of my practice, and also in terms of being able to apply my research in ways which will hopefully remove barriers, maybe reduce inequalities, maybe enhance opportunities for greater social justice, as well as perhaps challenging some negative stereotypes and stigma. Thank you very much for engaging with my presentation. If you're listening to this, hopefully by now the Zoom issues have been resolved, whatever they may be, and we can go back into the meeting room and take questions. But if not, my email address is on the title slide, and I would be happy to take any questions by email. Thanks again.